name is Miss Lizzie. I don't ever smoke the dizzy, but we can always share some disease. It's just a cup in time. This song doesn't have to rhyme. Life's all of us, not every moment we can be feeling fine. I wanna share a moment, just a second if you will, maybe even a cup of thrill. We could share this performance. It's tea time, come sit with me.
Well, welcome guys, Miss Liz in the house, and we are at the final 2 of June already. Yeah, we've already done half a year of 2026. Tonight I have the incredible, this afternoon I have Larry Freeborg in the house, and we're going to talk about his book, Always at Choice. And I'm going to pull up the book as well, so you'll be able to see the incredible cover. We'll talk about that as well. We're going to talk about his tea, and his tea is Transitioning Support Coach, Elder who is wise and empathetic listener. That is the tea we are serving in the house tonight. We are not serving a beverage. We are serving a story at this table with Miss Liz. But before we get started, you guys know how Miss Liz rolls. Go over all to those platforms: Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Clapper, Lemonade, all those good ones that Miss Liz hasn't even mentioned. Miss Liz is on all of those as well. Check those out. Give those a like, follow, and subscribe, because these tea times do make a difference for the guest and for listening audience that resonate with the topics. Also, jump over to the podcast apps: Podbean, Listen Notes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, all the ones I haven't mentioned. Miss Liz is on there too. Check that out. But I want you guys to jump over to babyboomers.org, because if you're looking to be featured on different podcasts and Miss Liz doesn't bring the proper flavor that you're looking for, there's over 50 different podcasts that are on babyboomers.org, and they have all walks of life on there as well, so you can get yourself featured on different podcasts as well. So jump over to babyboomers.org. Miss Liz has been partnered up with them for about 3 years now. It's an incredible platform. You'll find everything over there. You'll find podcasts, radio, some good articles to read in that as well. So there's lots of good stuff over there. So babyboomers.org, check that out. So let's get started with disclaimer and then a beautiful intro, and then we're going to get Larry in here and we're going to spill some tea together. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz's Tea Time is a global platform dedicating to sharing real life stories, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations that inspire awareness, healing, and connection. I, Miss Liz, is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment during the live broadcast, please grant StreamYard permission to display your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that all the content brought forward during any Tea Time show is presented in good faith. However, discussions may include opinions, beliefs, and perspectives that do not necessarily represent the views of Miss Liz or the Tea Time platform. Information shared by guests is based on their own experiences and is perceived to be accurate at the given time of airing. All guests, viewers, and participants are responsible for using their own good judgment when considering any action or decision that may relate to these discussions. Some episodes may cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to trauma, abuse, grief, mental health, and other emotionally triggering subjects. Listeners' and viewers' discretion is strongly advised. Tea Time with Miss Liz is an open discussion forum designed to offer insight, inspire awareness, and create connection. It is not a substitute for professional, medical, legal, or therapeutical advice. If you require professional support, please seek assistance from qualified professionals or trusted resources in your area. If you have any questions regarding this disclaimer or the content of the discussion, you are welcome to contact me, aka Miss Liz, directly at my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com, or visit my link tree at Miss Liz's Tea Time. By choosing to participate in, comment on, or view these live shows, you acknowledge and accept this disclaimer. Your participation is entirely voluntary. I, Miss Liz, welcomes you to join the conversation with an open heart, and if at any time you feel this platform is not right for you, I respect your wishes and decision and welcome you back whenever you are ready. Tea Time with Miss Liz is serving truth and awareness one cup at a time. Well, welcome to Tea Time with Miss Liz, where conversations remind us that while we cannot always choose what happens to us, we can choose how we respond, how we heal, and how we move forward. Today's guest has turned unimaginable loss into a lifelong mission of helping others discover hope, resilience, and the power of choice. Please join me in welcoming Larry Freeborg, author, speaker, coach, and creator of Always at Choice, whose life changed forever after the heartbreaking loss of his wife to leukemia, leaving him to raise 4 young children while facing overwhelming grief and uncertainty. Rather than allowing tragedy to define his future, Larry discovered that even in life's darkest moments, we all have choice points. Those choices become the foundation of his personal healing and the message he now shares with audience around the world. His book, Always at Choice, Strategies for Moving On After the Death of His Spouse or Life Trauma, offers practical tools, compassionate guides, and hopes for anyone navigating grief, trauma, major life transitioning, relationships, or personal growth. Today's Tea Time will explore healing after grief and loss, the power of personal choice, resilience through life's greatest challenges, rebuilding stronger relationships, and finding hope after trauma. Larry reminds us that while we cannot control every circumstance, we always have the ability to choose our next steps. So grab your cup and join us for a heartfelt conversation filled with hope, healing, wisdom, and real life tea, truth, experience, and awareness. Let me get Larry in here and let's spill some tea together. Welcome, Larry.
Hi. Nice to be here.
It is a pleasure to have you here, Larry.
Thank you.
So, Larry, let's get started to know who Larry is before we get into the book and all that good stuff with my audience today.
Okay.
So, who was Larry as a little boy and who is Larry now?
Oh, Larry as a little boy would be someone who started school early, but had, let's say, the brains to be starting school early, but not the maturity of how to be in relationships. So he struggled all the time, feeling like he wasn't adequate, not enough. And that dogged him for quite a while until he finally took a look at his life and said, hey, I'm not doing too bad. So, but
And Larry,
how to get there.
and Larry, who are you today?
I'm just a happy, excited, or enlightened person who was kind of like a wise elder. I've experienced a lot of things, so when people have things that they share with me, I may have done it or seen it or something before, and it's so being a listener is a really important part of my life today. And
Absolutely.
practicing empathy would be also another important part of my life today.
Well, Larry, since you're jumping into your tea right away, let's get into that tea because the words that you gave me was transitioning support coach. So let's work with that one first, and then we'll jump into the other two parts of your tea. So talk to me a little bit about the transitioning support coach.
Well, most of us, if we have major tragedy in our life, don't get through on our own. We need to ask for help. And a lot depends on who we ask for help, whether we really get it or not. I was very fortunate. Well, I'd gone a year after my wife's death, really struggling with my life, how to work my job, how to work my community commitments, how to show up for my kids. And finally, it got to be overwhelming and I wasn't able to handle it very well. So I reached out and asked for help. I went to my folks, asked them if they'd watch my kids for a little while. And my dad wisely said, is there somebody at the office that can give you a helping hand? So I called the psychiatrist. He listened to my story. He said, would you be willing to go into this, that term at those days was psych ward? And I said, absolutely. And what I liked about why I did that is that I was already using business consultants in my life. And I thought, well, if it's okay for me to use a business consultant, why isn't it okay for me to use a personal consultant? So I felt no guilt or shame or at all in asking for help. But boy, did I appreciate the help that I got.
So, Larry, when your wife passed, how old were your boys?
How old were I have 3 girls and 1 boy. They ranged in age from 6 to 16.
Ooh.
And so they were right at that developmental stage. And my biggest issue was cooking. I was just overwhelmed with how do I feed these 4 kids. I was also overwhelmed in trying to find a job. I had worked for this company for 18 years, and about 4 or 5 weeks after Shirley's funeral, my job was eliminated, and I was put out to look for a new job. At the time, it was a recession. Unemployment was 7.4%, and I was just overwhelmed with the task of what do I do next in order to get by.
Well, Larry, I want to talk about the elder, the wise man in you, because that's your middle of your T. So let's talk about that a little bit.
The wise elder?
The wise elder.
That was a name given to me by people that I was working with and said, well, you're a wise elder. I said, I'm not an elder. Yes, you're an elder. You know, you're in your 80s. You're an elder. So that was a big thing to accept, that I was an elder. And also, the more that I looked at it, the more that I realized that I've had some really interesting experiences. Most of my learning is experiential. In other words, they were things that I actually listened to and practiced. And if it worked, I adopted it. If it didn't work, I set it aside and went on to the next thing that I needed to have in order to keep growing. But I never, when I was 40, I had never thought about lifelong learning. And that became a part of my life for the last 47 years, is to just always be aware of the opportunities to learn. It's been great because it keeps my life pretty exciting, pretty enthused. I'm pretty curious. I like learning new things. And boy, there's an awful lot to learn.
Well, we talked about that before we went live. I said, I learn so much from my guests all the time. I love learning from you guys because you teach me something every time we sit at this table.
Well, thank you. And I would have to say I've experienced the same thing when I've been with podcast hosts, as I've learned things that I never expected to learn. When I said, well, I thought I should do a podcast. Well, I didn't have a clue what a podcast was. I never had been listening to podcasts at that time, but they've been great conversations, because most podcasters, all the ones that I've met anyway, are curious and they're interested and they're respectful, and we get a chance to bounce ideas back and forth, and it's been a joyful experience.
I like that. Bounce ideas back and forth.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the empathetic listener part of your T.
Well, I wasn't always a good listener. I was kind of like a teller. I would tell people what they were supposed to do and how to do it in my marketing and business career. That's really where I was when I was at 3M Company and Medtronic. I basically was helping design sales programs for other sales reps to take out to the marketplace and to sell customers and clients. I had no idea. When I started writing this book, I thought I was going to write a business book, about how to do strategic planning and how to do business development. But the more that I got into the writing of the book, the more that it evolved into always a choice, because I realized that was the big difference in my life since I was 40, is that I knew that I was always at choice about what I wanted to do next with my life. I couldn't change the circumstances, but I could change how I looked at the circumstances. And that became it became the foundation for how I chose to live the rest of my life, is realizing that I was always a choice. And I like that particular perspective, because if I live in I have to, I want to, I need to, all my power goes away. But if I say I choose to do it, the power is within me, and I have a belief system that I'm accountable and responsible for what I create in my life. and it gives me the power to take action to make something happen.
Absolutely. Well, we have a question here that came into the studio from Paula, and it's Larry, when you first heard the words, "You are always at choice," what went through your mind?
Well, quite frankly, I sputtered. I said, I don't have a choice. I have to take care of my kids. My dad took care of me when my mom had Guillain-Barré, and that's what I have to do. I have to take care of my kids. So the therapist or nurse therapist that was with me said, well, I'm just trying to give you some options about you could take care of your kids. Your folks could take care of your kids. You could send your kids to a boarding school. You could, and she kept going on, and I just got irritated with her. And finally, I just said, all right, I choose to take care of my kids. And it's like a shift went on in my body the minute that I realized that once I chose to do it, then I couldn't choose to do anything different about the leukemia. I could only choose how I chose to raise my kids and how I chose to feed my kids. And so
we have another question. Another question. Go ahead, Larry. I'll let you finish it and then I'll throw the question in.
That's okay. I really appreciate the question because I was resistant. The whole concept of being at choice, it wasn't something that I'd lived with for 40 years. I mean, I just was reacting to situations. I didn't realize that I was at choice about how I reacted to situations. It's really been a strong foundation. Even now, I have a saying that to be let's see how the heck does that one go. It'll come back to me. Go ahead.
Well, the next question that came in is, how did becoming a father of 4 during such a difficult season shape your outlook on life?
Actually, it became more positive. I really started to appreciate that I had power to make things happen. If I declared that I was going to do something, it turns out that the power of that declaration brought with it the energy to make it happen. And I would look at what were the steps that I needed to do in order to make this happen. A good example was even writing this book. For 20 years, I thought about writing this book. 20 years. Finally, I asked myself, Larry, are you going to write the book or not? You're a choice. And once I decided I was going to write the book, I said, well, you don't know how to write, and how about what are all the things you're going to have to do for publishing and all the information you're going to have to pull together in terms of permissions and things like that. So I decided I would hire a publishing company to help me. Inside the publishing company, they had a writing coach. So for the first 3 chapters, I used a writing coach to help me write better, gain some confidence that I could write. And then I also knew that I had learned from some really good teachers and that I could leverage from those teachers lessons that could be helpful for others. But I had to make the declaration that I was going to do it regardless of how much pain I was going through. It still took me 3.5 years to write the book, but I learned even something with that lesson that, hey, with focus and determination and willingness to learn along the way, I call it zigzagging to success by learning from my failures. It just meant that I hadn't succeeded yet. So I had to just keep going, keep going, keep going.
Sounds like an adventure, zigzagging and bouncing. It sounds like a theme park.
It was. It's been a fun journey, really. Well, actually, my life took on a whole different zest for excitement and fun once I made that commitment. And then I started developing other belief systems, like I'm always at choice, but I like the one that I'm accountable and responsible for what I create. So no longer do I live life as a victim. I mean, stuff happens. I mean, I lost my second wife at the beginning of last year, but you adjust, you accept it, and it's okay. That's what the situation is. You know you're going to go through the grief and the sadness, and then you make the choice to move on. And that doesn't mean that I don't think about her. I do. I think about both of them a lot. But that was another part of the journey that I used to have a belief system, and this is part of the journey, is learning that the belief systems I had maybe weren't serving me really well. So, but the hardest thing in the world is to change belief systems because you hold on to them because you think they're right. Well, I had a belief system that I could trust the women that I loved to leave me. That wasn't very productive in terms of developing relationships with the women that I wanted to be interested in me. And then as they got closer and closer, I'd push them away because I didn't, trust the relationship. Finally, I did the same thing I did many times. I asked for help, went to a place called Onsite. Onsite is maybe one of the top 10 therapeutic centers in the United States. And I got in touch with my belief system that I was trusting the women that I loved to leave me. And I realized when I got done with that session, actually, I trust the women that I love to love me forever and to be there and support me and love me until I die. So but what a difference. I operate so much differently when I'm operating like the women loved me instead of that they were going to leave me.
I like that you're putting that out there, Larry, because we grow up with these beliefs, right? But
Yes.
there's no age of changing your beliefs. What you believe last year, you might not believe next year. Like there's room for growth, there's room for change. And I really like the beliefs and values that you have, because you have 10 top ones that I just want to mention a little bit of, and then we're going to get into some of the questions that are coming in. But the top 10 that you have is always have a choice. Number 2 is accountability and responsibility. Number 3, moods and emotions. 4, gratitude and blessings. 5, creativity, gifts and talents. 6 is trust. 7, living in service. 8, lifelong learning. 9, learn to ask for help. And 10, business should work for you versus you working for the business. So out of all those 10 that I just mentioned, which one did you struggle with the most?
Which one did I struggle with the most? I think the one that I work on even today is the moods and emotions that I have are predispositions for action. And I've learned over time that a positive mood, I can get a lot more done than if I'm in a negative mood. So, but I didn't know that it was possible to create my mind so that I can think more positively than negatively. I got that from a book called Positive Intelligence. And it really is fascinating that I do 10 blessings a day. And the primary reason, it's a practice that keeps me thinking positively so that I'm not wallowing in self-pity or not wallowing in, gee, ain't it awful? But it's just, these are problems that come up and problems that I need to solve. I guess, maybe the second one would be dealing with fear. The reason that I didn't start that book for 20 years is I was afraid. And so how do you deal with fear? What's the way that you can break that down into the stages and move forward and get the stuff done? So the lessons of my learning how to handle fear was whitewater rafting and climbing a cliff.
I told you guys, adventure. This guy is zigzagging, bouncing, zip lining. Wow.
It's a big lessons.
Well, Larry, we have a couple more questions that came in the studio, and I'd like to get them out to you. From Adventure Show is, did your years at 3M and Medtronics influence your coaching style?
At the very beginning, when I was coaching, I was into giving advice, kind of like a consultant. And or when I started as a sales rep, I would try to sell people on ideas. What I learned is that neither one of those worked. Is that I couldn't sell, even though I was really clear and I felt really comfortable about my strategic planning skill set, that I could help people get really clear about what they needed to work on to achieve the success they wanted to achieve. What I couldn't sell them on what to do, and I couldn't tell them what to do. That's the reason that I looked into coaching. The other big lesson that I learned about coaching is there's not one way to coach. I mean, that's the reason that I went to ontological coaching and somatic coaching and equine coaching and Byron Katie coaching. There's lots of different approaches to helping people get past their limiting belief systems, but that's where it all starts. That's where people are stuck. They can't take the action that they want to take. They're either afraid of it or they don't know what to do. And but gaining that awareness that people have limiting belief systems that keep them stymied was really a big breakthrough for me from a coaching standpoint.
Well, sometimes we have to look in that mirror, right? And we have to do what we're coaching to do. And sometimes that's a big step.
I look at myself all the time, and I ask myself, be an observer of the observer you are. This is the one I was trying to remember earlier. Well, by helping myself look at how I'm looking at the problem, what I've learned is that sometimes I'm the problem. That how I look at the problem is the problem. It's not that if I look at the problem differently, I can solve it. But if I look at it the old way, I'm stuck. So that's a pretty useful lesson for me, is to be an observer of the observer that I am, is to step back a little bit and look at how I'm looking at it.
Right? Sometimes we are the problem. When, we can't blame anybody else, but look at ourselves and say, you know what? Oh, it is us.
Right. Yeah.
Well, we have a question here from Jack, and it is, how did stepping through the gate begin?
Well, like I shared earlier, it began as a business development book. I was going to talk about the lessons that I learned about strategic planning. And then I was going to talk about, okay, well, once you're clear about what you want to get done, you've got clarity about your goals. Now the next step is you have to implement. And that was also part of the lesson that I got about creatively capitalizing on my natural gifts and talents wherever they would take me. That was an idea that I got from a Toastmaster that had been promoted up to a plant manager of a local business in Milwaukee. And I asked him what his secret to success was. And he shocked me with his answer. He said, Larry, I'm not a very smart guy. He said, I didn't finish high school. I did eventually in the service. I took a GED exam and I tried a couple of courses in college, but they never really fit. He said that I'm not trying to be braggadocious. It just happens to be the way that it is. I think 3 to 4 times faster than the people that are next to me when it comes to production planning. But he said, it's not just that I have these gifts. You have to be creative in your gifted areas. And the third and the most important thing is you have to implement your creations. And I thought, God, I'm a jack of all trades, a master of none. I don't have any true gifts. And the more that I thought about it, I realized that I did have some gifts and that I could creatively capitalize on them. Later, I found out that there was a test I could take. And it told me that I was seeing patterns at about the 97th percentile level. In other words, when I was facilitating a group of people, the ideas would come out and I would see the patterns that they would show. So my trick was to creatively capitalize on the patterns, get the goals set in a ranked order of priority. And then the next part was generate ideas on how to take action to get the goals. And for 7 years, I never had a calling card. And I kept wondering, why am I getting business? Well, I got business because I got results. Yeah, way to go, Doomer.
I was going to say, or you bake a good cake, but you talked about cooking. You struggle with cooking. What was the biggest challenge with cooking for the 4 kids?
Oh, wanting to do it right, wanting to do it well. Actually, I had been a fry cook when I was going to high school, and I'd managed a coffee shop out in Glacier National Park. My mom had been sick, so I knew how to do eggplant and roast beef. And so it wasn't like I didn't know how to cook, but it just seemed like it was overwhelming. It was an overwhelming task that I eventually learned that we'll hire somebody to do it. I mean, it's easier if you hire somebody to do the cooking than you try to do it all yourself. So asking for help is a big lesson.
Absolutely. Well, we have a question here from Polar Bear Parliament is, what do people misunderstand most about the healing process?
Oh, wow. What do they misunderstand? I guess I have the same affliction. I expect it to happen fast.
That right there is where I think we all misunderstand how fast grief is, right?
Right.
Some can get over it so fast, and then others it's years.
It is, and it's like it's kind of like learning how to manage grief. You know, you could have your grief comes to different people in different ways. It could go really soon, but most of the time it takes a while to get through grief. And so surrendering and accepting is really important. And then once you decide that what you've lost is gone forever, it's not coming back, then you are a choice about whether you want to spend your lifetime grieving or do you want to move on and do something with the rest of your life. At least that's the lesson that I've applied, is that, hey, at some time when I accepted that Dodie had died or Shirley had died, once I accepted that they were gone, and I knew that I hopefully was going to live a few more years, that I wasn't dead, I needed to just make some choices to move on in my life. And that's otherwise, I mean, it's not like I don't miss them. I'm not sad. Sure, I remember them contributing in a major way to my life, but I don't dwell on it. I don't live in it all the time. I'm really living and moving on and being of service.
Absolutely. You know, and grief is remembering those memories, right? It's the memories and the moments, the sounds and the smells. You know, those are the little things that we struggle with because we can't smell them anymore. We can't hear them anymore. But if we really listen really deep, we can still feel them around us.
You can feel them for sure. They feel in your body. Which was a big learning experience too, is to do somatic coaching. The first lesson that I learned about coaching is there were 3 places to interviewing: in language, in the body, in emotion, and in the body. Well, the place that I learned wasn't that effective in the body, so then I took somatic coaching. Was that an eye-opener? Just to learn that where does fear live in my body? That to realize that it's actually an emotion that lives in my body, and it's real. I mean, I've been in places where I've had fear so big that I feel like I've got a kitten ball in my stomach. And but it starts up in my throat or up in my upper chest and then my upper chest. And so it's just handy to know that there's stuff in my body that is affected. That's why equine coaching works so well, is because the doggone horses feeding off of what's going on in your body all the time. You can't lie.
They feel it.
They nail you all the time.
Well, we have a question about the equine therapy. How has equine therapy helped people experience emotional breakthroughs?
Oh, in order to answer that question, I have to tell my personal story. Where I was learning somatic coaching, they had this one day with equine coaching, and when I first got exposed to it, people weren't very aware to what was going on, and I became so impressed that I began thinking that I would get my master's degree in equine therapy because it was just so powerful. The group that I was with, I could see women that I knew were having trouble in relationships just because of the exercises that we were doing. And what happens is it showed up when we were working with horses, is that they'd be out and they were trying to lunge the horse, and the horse would just kind of walk in their space. It wouldn't have any respect for them at all. Wouldn't recognize, they didn't have any power that they moved through their body that would cause the horse to take action. And then I went out and I did my exercise, and I was pretty proud. I had gotten some tips on how I could get the horse to move. So I got it to walk and to trot and to canter. And then the coach asked me, well, now I'd like you to take, that horse is doing really well trotting, but what I'd like you to do is bring it down to a walk and sustain the walk. Wow. You know, whatever she said caught me, and somehow I lost my focus. I lost my energy power in my body. I stopped and the horse stopped, and for 20 minutes I couldn't get it back. I couldn't get it back to get that horse. Well, what was big is that evening I had an experience of like a sharp spear coming down on my back of my neck. And I realized that I had a story that I hadn't told my wife, I hadn't told my parents, I hadn't told my therapist. Nobody knew this experience that I'd had being sexually abused by a counselor at the University of Minnesota. And that was one of the reasons that I never finished getting my degree. That was one of the reasons that I didn't write. I finished my degree when I was 55 by addressing what had gone on and taking action to find out what did I have to do to get rid of the two incompletes that I had struggled with. But it really gave me sensitivity for people that have experienced sexual abuse in their life. Boy, you lose your self-confidence. You lose your ability to be proud of who you are. And what I find out is that there's a lot of men that could be helped with equine therapy because it causes men to be authentic with the equine horse, or the horse rather. As not like it doesn't work for women, it does, but it really is also one of the few things that works for men. That's why it works for PTSD so well. Anyway, that helped me through it. So those were, and then I went on and did some other exercises with horses, and I just came to really appreciate them. Unfortunately, I've never owned horses. I've had to borrow horses from other people, but it's been a real positive experience.
Well, thank you for sharing that with my audience, Larry. I know that wasn't an easy share to put out there. And you know, I honor men who share their stories, because this is what we need. We need that voice. We need the voice of change. And there's a lot of men that are suffering in silence. So by you sharing that today, Larry, you're giving people hope to share their stories as well. I'm going to pull up your book because I want to know about this ship that's on the cover of this book. So for all the listeners out there that can't see the cover of the book, can you just explain what we're looking at, Larry?
That's actually a picture of a copper rubbing that I did when I was in the psych ward. That's the actual rubbing picture. And what that represented for me was leaving the dark side, which is where I was, and moving into the sunlight with the help of the sailors that were helping me move that ship. But I experienced myself being big and powerful with help to make it go. And so that's kind of my, what do you say, my token? But it really is meaningful for me that is a ship that's moving into the sunlight under full power with lots of sailors helping me make it move.
Wow, that's really strong. We have a question here. What inspired the title, Always at Choice? Because I know we always say you always have a choice, but your book is called Always at Choice.
Yeah, well, I used to think that I always had a choice. But the really significance is always at choice. It's once you get, it's kind of like once you have the experience of realizing that I'm always in this very moment, you and I are making choices all the time. I'm making a choice. Well, am I going to answer that question? Am I not going to answer that question? Am I going to answer the question this way or am I going to answer it that way? But I'm always at choice in the moment. That for me was extremely powerful, that I was in the moment, I was always at choice. And it's really served me well. I like that distinction. Instead of saying I always have a choice or I'm always can make a choice, that's weak. No. I'm always at choice means that even the choice of not making a choice is a choice. It just captured my body, really. So that's where I chose to live. And that's where all those values came from, because I was choosing how I wanted to live my life. Surprisingly, those aren't the things that I got from my parents. They're not the things that I got from my church. They're not the things I got from the community. They were the things that I realized what was missing. And I went out and I got teachers to teach me.
So, Larry, in this book, what will people find?
Well, you find a lot more than just how to handle grief. At least the feedback that I got is it's kind of like a handbook, something you can constantly go back to and leverage off of the ideas that are in the book and apply them to your life and help you take action, help you manifest what it is that you want to achieve in your life. So I'm in the process of putting together, well, here's another. I tried to do a book launch with a normal PowerPoint presentation. I bombed. It was bad. So I found a bookstore in Eau Claire, Wisconsin she said, well, why don't I just interview you? And gee, I thought, well, that would work out really great. And so she interviewed me with kind of like the questions that I've given to other people. And it went so well that I thought, that's what I need to do is do podcasts. Well, now I'm realizing if I'm going to help people integrate this book into their life, I didn't want to do it. I resisted it for a long time, but I'm developing a workshop, which really is more of an interactive workshop where I point out that you're always a choice and you've got this choice or this choice to help people be more, let's say, in tune with where they are and look at what choices they have they can take action from. And we'll see how it works. I give a first presentation on it in about 3 weeks.
So you ready for it?
Not yet.
You got 3 weeks.
I'm zigzagging to success. I develop in implements or increments. It's see the lesson of one rapid at a time is when I was whitewater rafting in Costa Rica. we hit this one big wave, and the guide said, if you hit that wave with enough power, you'll go through the wave and go sailing down on the other side. But if you don't hit it with enough power, that wave will turn you over and you'll be popped out like toothpicks. Well, I was a toothpick, and I dropped out, and I'm underneath the raft, and I'm trying to save my sandals, and there's little air bubbles all around me, and I'm saying, Freeborg, it might be more helpful if you went outside the raft and got air rather than worried about your sandals.
Well, maybe they were your favorite sandals, Larry.
I know. But the next morning, I got popped out of the raft again. And so now I'm scared because I'm taking my son on this whitewater rafting trip. But they had experienced guides from the United States that were doing the rafting. So I said, you guys have to work with people that got afraid of the waves. He said, so the first guide that I asked said, I do, but what I experience is that people anticipate the rapids. And so they got this one rapid. And then what they do is they build the next rapid on top of that, and then the next rapid on top of that. And pretty soon they've got this huge rapid that they need to go over. And he said, I suggest you do one rapid at a time. Made sense to me. So then I talked to the second river guide. He said, there's a lot of talk about the dangers of whitewater rafting, but you're more at risk of injuring yourself on the shoreline playing badminton or catch or volleyball than you are getting flipped out of a raft. Because if you follow the rules, put your feet first and you don't step on the river, there's a good chance you'll be safely rescued by a kayaker and there won't be any problem. So that was a good one. The third guy said, you're here to have fun. So when there's a quiet part in the river, jump in the water and experience that the water is warmer than it is in the United States right now. And splash around it and have fun. And I thought, God, here I am, a record-breaking swimmer that swam for the University of Minnesota, and I'm afraid of the water. Doesn't make any sense. So I laughed at myself because we had some class 4 and class 5 rapids coming up. But one rapid at a time became the message that I taught myself, is to break big projects into small ones, take a little step at a time, not try to anticipate the whole big thing. It's kind of like this presentation that I've got coming up. Build it in increments. It's so much easier than to think that I've got the whole thing that I need to perfect right away.
Absolutely. Well, Larry, we have a question here from Kyle, and it's, what chapter of your book do readers tell you has impacted them the most?
Actually, it's not about the initial part of always that choice. I suppose that's the beginning. But I think it's the application of the stories to making choices to move on that people find helpful. At least that's what I'm getting the feedback is that they really appreciate having something they can go back to that reinforces some idea that maybe they've had, but now they got a chance to look at from a different perspective. My personal favorite is being an observer of the observer you are, because that one is so reflective on me not operating with hubris and thinking that I'm some wise person that has all the answers. I don't have all the answers. What I have is some processes that have worked for me that I'm willing to share with others, the experience.
So, Larry, what was the hardest chapter to write in your book?
Well, there's one chapter where I learned from adult children of alcoholics. And I love this particular poem because it's walking with, I walk down the street, there's a hole in the sidewalk. I didn't see it, I step in, it's not my fault. So it goes through the 5 stages. And at the very beginning, you're not responsible for what you did. Then you walk down the street and you put your step in, or you step in the hole. Oh, wow, it was my fault. And then you get to the point where you choose another street and walk. That was really helpful to realize at the very beginning, I was in habit. I did habitual things of how I looked at my way of living. But as I grew, I could actually leave that old stuff behind and move on in my life. At 40, I didn't have a clue for some of these things that are in my book. So I really was fortunate that I applied learning, and I used what worked and I didn't use what didn't work. So
We have another question here from Russ, and it's looking back, what choice are the most grateful you've made after those difficult days in 1979?
well, the biggest choice that I made in the psych ward was that I was going to take care of my kids. That I had been under the illusion that trying to be a corporate executive and make money was my quest in life. But after that situation with my 4 kids, they became my priority of raising good kids. And I have to tell you, it's come back to me in spades. My kids are loving kids. They support me. They're helping me now at my age. I really appreciate all their help. But it's just making that choice of letting go what I thought I wanted and shifting my choices to what I really want. Is I became a better dad. I became a better employee. I became a better coach. I mean, there were all sorts of benefits by shifting my point of view about what I wanted to accomplish in my life. One of the key things that happened along the way was making a choice to be of service. I mean, I didn't have that idea before or what my values were. It's really been interesting to have a clear set of values that I want to live my life by. I'm pretty comfortable with those. I'm not perfect, but it's still a pretty good life, and I'm enjoying life here. I mean, I'm 87. I'm still alive and vibrant and still putting out things. So,
Well, 87 young and sitting at my table serving tea. I love it. Well, Larry, I have some lightning bolt questions for you. So just some quick answers here. One word that defines healing for you.
Peace.
Coffee conversation or quiet reflection?
Quiet reflection.
What brings you peace today?
Blessings. I love thinking of birds. I like listening to bird sounds. I like being outside and outdoors. For me, looking at trees and animals and stuff gives me an awareness that life goes on, because these things all die shorter times than we do as humans. So taking those in and appreciating them for what they are at the time is pretty comforting.
Best life lesson learned through hardship?
I think it's the title of the book. I'm always at choice.
What does freedom mean to you now?
Freedom means that I'm living life according to the choices that I'm making. It's for me to go to assisted living I was living in my forever home. I mean, it was a beautiful place on the river in Chippewa Falls. I'd get up in the morning, go out, look out, and see the river, sunshine. I'd step on the dock or the deck and listen to the birds sing. That was beautiful. To give that up and to come to this place and to meet other people and to it was not an easy decision. My son cleverly snookered me into it, but it's gotten me closer to my daughters. We had a Father's Week last week. I had my daughter and her husband fly in from Gloucester, Massachusetts, and my son and his wife fly in from Portland, Oregon. We had um, 4 birthdays and 3 Father's Days to celebrate, and a boat raid. It was busy for the whole week. It was wonderful, but there was a lot of love experienced in that journey that week.
So, Larry, if anybody wanted to get this book, where could they find this book?
The best place that I would look for the book is at Amazon under always at choice.net, and I think you've got it up on the screen. But that's the best place that I use to find it. But supposedly it would be available at Barnes and Noble and places like that also. But it's always at choice.net. And inside that particular place, you can also hear some of the other podcasts that I've done, Liz, and I think they're kind of enjoyable. But it's me, right?
And Larry, what final message would you have for the listeners today?
The lesson is to kind of accept what is and realize that even the biggest tragedy in the world, you can just parking lot it for a while and realize that in time you can convert it into a gift and an opportunity. And that to me is not my original idea. I got that idea from Shirzad and Positive Intelligence, but I really like it because it's, to a certain extent, it reflects what I've done in my life, is that I've had these tragedies come up. I don't get all upset about the tragedy or weepy or, frazzled. I just say, hey, that's happened. And if I just kind of let it sit for a while, all the anxiety about it kind of leaves. And then I realize eventually I can convert it into a gift and an opportunity. And that's why I'm doing all the things that I'm doing right now, is just converting them into gifts and opportunities and enjoying life. So I would suggest that would be a good thing for people to live with.
So, Larry, do you have any plans of doing a second book?
Plans. I don't have a declaration that I'm going to do a second book yet, but I'm still learning. And so the more learning that I'm doing, especially about belief systems and how to help people let go of old belief systems that are hindering them or stifling them and making choices to move on, that kind of intrigues me a little bit. I'd still like to be a contributor in some way. And I'm learning how to keep people involved and having them participate in the choices rather than lecturing them about the choices. So that's going to be a fun learning experience because, quite frankly, I don't know how to do it yet, but I'll figure it out.
I'm sure you will. Well, Larry, thank you so much for sitting at the table and serving your tea today to my listening audience. Thank you to the guests who came in and asked your questions. I could not do this without all of you guys. This is tea and me, and we make an amazing team, and that's how we serve tea in this house. We're just going to do a quick recap of what today's tea time was, and then I'll be back at 7 p.m. for the last tea time of June. What a deeply moving and inspiring conversation today. Larry, thank you for sharing your heart, your wisdom, and your remarkable journey with the Tea Time community. Your story reminds us that grief may change our lives forever, but it does not have to take away our future. Today, we explored loss, resilience, healing, relationships, communication, and the incredible power found in the choices we make each day. One of the strongest takeaways from today's conversation is this: life will present us with circumstances we never asked for. Our greatest strengths lie in choosing how we respond. Through always a choice, you're showing us that healing isn't about forgetting those we love or pretending life isn't difficult. It's about learning to move forward with courage, compassion, and purpose while honoring every part of our journey. You reminded us that every day offers a new choice, to remind to remain stuck in yesterday, or to take one step forward today, tomorrow. As we close today's tea time, I leave everyone with this thought. What choice can you make today that your future self will thank you for? Because healing doesn't happen all at once. It happens one choice, one moment, one day at a time. Thank you, Larry, for reminding us that hope is always possible, resilience can be learned, and we are never without choices. Until next time, keep choosing hope, keep choosing growth, and keep serving real life tea, one conversation at a time. And today's takeaway is you may not be able to choose every circumstance life brings, but you can always choose your response. Those small daily choices become the pathway from surviving to thriving. And I'll see everybody at 7 p.m. and we'll do this all over again.